Welcome to the Future You YouTube sessions. This month's guest is Catherine Sharman, who is co-founder of the award-winning London-based restaurant Apres, who she runs with a business partner, Danny. The restaurant has been voted TimeOut's best healthy restaurant and Forbes' best gluten-free restaurant in London. She is an accredited nutritionist and functional medicine practitioner, and we discuss how the right foods can taste good and make you feel more alive than ever. Well, thank you, Catherine, so much for joining me today.
It's an absolute pleasure.
And you've been super busy.
Yes, it's been a bit of a scary time, obviously. We sort of felt it in February, what was coming. And I mean, I've put in like all my inheritance, my home, my savings, and Danny and I have been working 3 years. So suddenly to allow it just to disappear is actually, it's not an option. It's like, it can't happen. So what is the term, pivoted, and we turned ourselves into a mini supermarket, as I figured that, everyone was having problems getting things from supermarkets. And I was worried about our suppliers in terms of looking after them, because we use Natura, who source from small farms. And so, what happens to them? So, and our butcher has his own farm and it's all his own meat. So again, something else. So what we did was we had I turned all of our menu into frozen ready meals, and then people could order Natura and their meat through, and our fish through us. And it was going it was really good, actually. It's like a whole little industry. So many people were wanting to be supportive of us, so we didn't sink. And then we're now launching a proper business from it. So it's been excessively full on, and trying to understand like how we can, the restaurant, 1 minute it's allowed to open, then it can't, then it can. And then you can't do any mixing with people, but you can if you're from work. It's ridiculously challenging, But you've got to get your positive pants on and you've got to keep going.
Yeah, and you have, so well done. Well done for pushing forward.
Thank you very much, yes. It's good now. Now, there's been some dark moments, I can tell you, really has been, over this last few months. And even before, like setting up a restaurant, it's of a crazy thing, but it was important to show people how you can eat without it being depriving and depressing. So but we're coming through it, and it's really exciting. I'm so happy, so proud actually as well.
And so where did your idea, because you run your business with your business partner Danny, don't you?
Yes.
Where did it all sprout from?
I've always cooked since I was about 14 years old, maybe younger. My mum and my dad used to do these Sunday roasts and make gravies and things. I've always been interested in cooking, but it wasn't until I did my training that I actually made the connection as to what happens when you eat something, which sounds completely crazy. We're not taught it. So anyway, did all my training, and then I cared for my grandparents. They were 94 and 95. My grandfather had a leg ulcer, which I cleared up, used all my knowledge, my training and things. But then when my grandma died, my grandpa didn't need me. And I went to a previous boss of mine, said, "Oh, come and work for me at this restaurant, sort of gastropub," which is where I met Danny. He was the bar manager, and he was looking to move on to develop his own business. But anyway, he was very interested in nutrition, because he used to play rugby, and he really, he likes feeling fit. And but he didn't. He had a number of issues, and then I took him under my wing and made him breakfast and the lunches. And he kept saying to me, "Are you sure this is healthy?" Because his way of looking at healthy food was the grilled chicken, the broccoli, the brown rice every day, and at the weekend he would binge on curries and chocolate cookies and things like that. And if we can look at what you're eating in a much better way, that you're enjoying everything you eat, you don't feel compelled to think you're being deprived, and therefore you deserve this treat. Not that we don't deserve treats, we deserve them. But anyway, so then he's like, him and my son was also like, when I was telling him about sugar and things, and he was like, "Mum, you've got to tell people this stuff." I'm like, "I know." And Danny was like, "We've got to show people this stuff. We've got to be able to do this." So I said, "Okay, we'll open a restaurant." And so then in January 2016, we spent a year planning it and searching. We looked at Brighton, obviously Bournemouth, Winchester, obviously London. I mean, I love London. I was born actually in Islington, where the restaurant is. So reason we started with a restaurant was because, as I'm sure you can write about things, but very difficult to get people to read it unless they're already are looking for that information. And a lot of people don't realise what therapy is, or they think it sounds a bit peculiar. And it's making that connection between the food we're eating is the raw ingredients for how our body functions. And, brain and our neurotransmitters are made out of the nutrients that are in the food. So it makes sort of obvious that what we're eating is going to have an impact on that. So, but what we wanted to do is, we didn't want to do it in a clinical way or a pedestal way. We wanted to do it in a beautiful way, because I've been a chef also for a long time. Food is wonderful. I just, I couldn't possibly imagine switching from something that feels depriving and depressing to, from my wonderful food that used to make me feel good. So I wanted to marry those two up. Here is the healthy food, and here is feeling good food, what makes you feel good, and the healthy food can be the same, but a lot of people say that. We're bored to tears with, oh, it's delicious and nutritious. That's I don't want it anywhere near our packaging, because it's not really right, is it? It hasn't been, people haven't been honest. And what we do is, we're just all normal people trying to survive, and we try to be as transparent as we possibly can and look after people, and to show this is what you can eat. Can you believe this? And here we are. We've done it. Wow. So, yeah.
And you've obviously taken a lot of time to prepare your menu, because you don't have gluten and no refined sugar, and organic, where possible, free trade.
Yeah. So what we do is, when I was doing my training, what I learned was how the body works, how they function, what they need to function in a optimal way, but then what may contribute to dysfunction. And learning all of this, I call it the principles of functional nutrition. And so I put all those principles underpin the menu. So everything I learned for the 4 years that I was doing the training for, 100 hours a week, nearly killed me, all that knowledge went into, I just adapted. Because, to be honest with you, don't tell anybody, but this is easy. I'm not doing anything that anybody else can't do, but don't tell anybody that. It's easy. We just need to do a few swaps and a few adaptations. And look, there's nothing wrong, with a black bean brownie. Honestly, I promise you, there isn't anything wrong with it. For me personally, I'm not on them. So it was important for me to come up with a brownie that wasn't going to affect the function of my body. So we made some adaptations to it. So that's why we are refined sugar free, because refined sugar has been processed in what we need to do now is we need to call something ultra processed, because if you cook something at home, you're processing it. It's a process. But ultra processing is these ingredients are stripped not only of a lot of their originality, but then things are added to them. Sugar is the nutritional perspective, because it helps with our energy. So, it's not a bad thing. I try not to talk about good and bad, but then I do understand, like I was saying to you the other day, is that, it's keeping things in context. So what we've done is, refined sugar, because of the way that it acts in the body, it interferes with certain absorption of minerals. It can be quite acidic forming in the gut. It causes inflammation. But also the other thing with it is it's 50% glucose and 50% fructose, which makes sucrose. Okay. Now, the glucose will enter the bloodstream, and our body can utilize that immediately if we need it for energy. But the fructose, before we can utilize it for energy, has to go through the liver and be processed by the liver. It's a perfectly normal process. But what that means is the liver is working, you've got an extra step there. So your livers are now having to do something. And what it does is it converts the fructose into fats. So triglycerides, free fatty acids, all these things. Now, if we then still needed the energy, then our body would then immediately utilize that for fuel. But more often than not, it's stored in the liver, which will contribute to a fatty liver. We use coconut sugar. So coconut sugar does have some minerals in it. Now not that we're eating it for the minerals, but it's quite nice to know that everything that we're eating is looking after us. So with the coconut sugar, it is that we use coconut blossom, which is the sap from the coconut flower, which is then gently heated, and it's a bit like maple syrup. But maple syrup is about between 55-60% fructose, whereas coconut blossom is about 15%. So therefore, the fructose content is lower. So I'm therefore, by definition or default, looking after my liver a bit better. If we're going to have sugar, let's choose one that is going to look after us better. So I love maple syrup. but maple syrup is so higher. Agave is about 85-90% fructose. So whilst, yes, it ticks a lot of the boxes being, you know, natural, minimal processing, etc., your liver is going to have to do a lot of work. And unfortunately, you know, and we're not out searching for our dinner every day, you know, in the wild, so we don't use the energy that we used to. So generally, and I am, you know, to keep it in context here, it can be stored in the liver, and it's going to contribute to a number of other issues. And then with gluten, so gluten is a tiny bit of a longer story, but gluten again is not an enemy. You know, even obviously, and you know, we're obviously going to totally avoid it if you're celiac or if you're intolerant to it, but it has consequences. And so what happens is when we eat gluten, we have to produce a molecule called zonulin in our gut to be able to break down the gluten. So gluten is an umbrella term for proteins. And so this zonulin, this little guy here, he is powerful, and he will pull apart, in consequence of breaking down gluten, the cells of the gut lining get apart temporarily whilst we're digesting the gluten. Now, if we're all really healthy and everything's fine and dandy, they'll just snap back into place, no problems. It's a normal, completely normal process. But generally not. Generally, what happens is a lot of inflammation, and there's other things that contribute also to this permeable gut lining, which is stress. Every time we're stressed, we get that stressful feeling. Our response is designed to pull apart the cells of the gut lining to allow the macromolecules through to be able to run away from the tiger, or whatever our response is, trying to catch the bus now, isn't it? You know, and so with the gluten, with that happening, if you can imagine, everything inside the gut is what's known as outside the body, and it has to pass through. The cells of the gut lining are 1 cell thick. So they're tiny, and they also have a layer of mucus. They have a layer of, and in there is all your, 70-75% of the immune system. Everything passes through these cells in a specific format. It has receptors and transporters. Everything is designed, it's very, very well controlled. So you can imagine when it gets pulled apart like this, goodness knows what gets through, and things get called what we call translocated, which bacteria get through. Something also called lipopolysaccharides, which are fragments of dead bacteria from our gut. They get reabsorbed into our bloodstream, but our immune system doesn't necessarily realize they're dead, and they will start to sort them out. The thing with the gluten is, I don't necessarily believe that we should never eat gluten, unless obviously you don't like it, or have the celiac disease, or you're intolerant to it. But what we're trying to do is try to eat a bit less of it, because people have it. We have it for breakfast, for snacks, for lunch, for snacks, for dinner, for snacks, bed, it's everywhere. And so when you can visualize what happens to our gut when we're eating it, it's like it's a constant process that your body's having to deal with. So we just need to, it's quite nice of us to give a little bit of love to our gut and not give it so much work to do. And also then you won't have this constantly absorbing into the bloodstream things in a way they shouldn't be. So, but the reason we're completely gluten-free is it's helpful because it means we have no cross-contamination. But honestly, it's because I just would be lazy. So it keeps me on my toes. That's the real reason why we're completely gluten-free. But of course, by being completely gluten-free, people then think that I think gluten is bad. And, that's not the case. It's just, we want to try and eat less of it.
And you cater for everyone then, don't you?
Yes, exactly. Yes. Well, it's not actually difficult. I just I understand because I understand how the body functions, how to make a dish that is not going to make an impact or cause dysfunction in an organ system. The trouble is that doesn't sound very sexy over the door, eat here because it shouldn't affect your organ systems. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's basically what everything we do, So yeah.
Your food looks so tasty, and you wouldn't think that by looking at it.
It's really important for me that the food looked like normal food, so that's why we do have, lamb curry and that, you've seen the menu, but, and it all looks beautiful because we eat with our eyes.
Yeah.
And, it's really crucial that it looks beautiful.
That's a nice way of re-educating people that you can eat tasty and it look delicious and you want to eat it and it still be healthy. It's a nice nice way that, as you've said, you can substitute specific things out for other things which are actually a better option and more nutrition, have more nutritional value.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Still come to us anyway. Now I've just told you the secret. Please still come, won't you?
And I love that you've updated your website. It looks great, by the way. You've got even so much knowledge on there. You can learn a lot from just dipping into all the different sections. You've got this great 5-day reset plan, which I love. And there's a tip on there about bicarbonate soda. Do you mind explaining that one? I love that one. I didn't realize that.
So basically, the trouble is we're not always aware whether our stomach has got plenty of stomach acid in it. So one of the tests we can do is to get a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda. You put it into like a little glass of water, not much. Now the problem is this is not diagnostic, okay? This will just give us an indication as to what your stomach acid levels are, because there are too many variables to it. So what you do is, as soon as you wake up in the morning, you don't drink anything, don't eat anything, but start to put some toast in. So you start to get that sphenic phase going, because you want to give your body the optimal chance to find out whether your stomach acid is the levels of it. So do that, and then you want to drink a glass of this water, which is very alkaline. And when you drink it, careful not to have gulps of air, because when this alkaline solution hits the stomach, which should be acidic, you should then get burping immediately, like straight away, because obviously it'll produce these gases. And so if we're not burping after about 5 minutes, then we know that our stomach acid levels are probably not as optimum as we need them to be, which is how I got into all this, by the way, because I used to have rosacea, and it's all to do with the gut and therefore stomach acid. As a nutritional therapist, you look at the root cause, you try and find the function of where it is. So yes, if you gulp in air, you're going to get a false positive, because you're going to burp, because you're just going to burp back up that air. So you've got to be careful. So as I say, it isn't diagnostic, but it gives us an indication, because if you're not burping as much as you should, then you can maybe look to try and address that, if that makes sense.
Yes, and the smelling, when you're smelling something before you drink it, it's just to get the juices going in saliva and get them active in the stomach.
Yes, exactly, because the cephalic phase of digestion is one of the most important. So because as soon as you start smelling food, that's why you feel hungry, because your stomach's now thinking, oh right, we're going to get some food going. Your stomach starts churning, so it thinks, right, I'm going to start getting ready for it. But that's why also, which is not so, is we may experience a bowel movement straight after eating. And it's not what you've just eaten, but it's because the cephalic phase gets the whole peristaltic. It's like starting the engine of a car, you can imagine. But you get going, and it's like, right, I'm ready. Come for me. And of course, that your whole digestive tract, and that's a sign of a healthy digestive tract, obviously, unless it's not. If you see what I'm saying, but I won't go into that yet.
A nice thing you can do at home, I think, which is great.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Instead of taking charge of your own health a bit in a way, which is always nice.
Well, this is the thing, okay, it is not about that GPs and the whole medical industry isn't crucial, but we haven't, unless we don't have doctors with us side by side all the time. We are grown-ups and adults, and so the more information we've got to be able to make that easier and more enjoyable, the better. Because otherwise, we end up with all these, particularly if you've got a health issue. We can look at managing it in a more effective way if we just have a few tools and some information. We still go to a doctor. We still come to see me, a healthcare provider. Don't try and make decisions by yourself if you don't, you're not sure. If it doesn't sit well with you, don't do it. Don't give up gluten just because I said to you about the gut. If you don't ever have any experiencing problems and you're perfectly happy with eating gluten, that's absolutely marvelous. What we're trying to do is make connections between what we're eating and how we're feeling. It's quite a broad statement, but it's very difficult to contain it into 4 words. But that's basically it. We know, like when I wake up in the morning, if I've had a couple of glasses of wine last night now, because I'm getting older, and if I wake up in the morning, or even I can feel my sleep isn't as nice, or when you wake up with having had this restorative sleep, you're like, I could literally, I've got so much motivation. How do I get that again? So it's a case of, okay, what was I doing before that contributed to that amazing night? And then we work on that and, make it in our lifestyle, more of that. but in a beautiful way with beautiful food that looks beautiful, that makes you feel beautiful.
Nice ethos. And so you did mention this briefly at the beginning, but you just launched your Better Boxes.
Yes.
And was that an idea you've always had along, or was this just evolved from the current situation with COVID?
It's a good question. So the restaurant was always the tip of the iceberg. You know, we needed to work on the bit below. And because we're so tiny, it's been very difficult for me to get out of the kitchen to help develop things, and for Danny to go out and spread the message, because we're just cooking and in the restaurant. So we started with the catering, and but then when COVID happened, so we've always had like something like this, to be honest with you, on the list. But to be honest, it was quite far down. It didn't feel achievable to me, because this is all really scary. I haven't had restaurants before. I run restaurants, but I've never had my own one, and particularly not with a nutritional underpin. So it's very scary. So when COVID happened and we did this pivoting to the supermarket, etc., and saw the frozen ready meals, we're like, well, hang on a minute, this is amazing. We can actually reach now so many people, which means that so many people start to understand, it's not just about, I've got to buy from our products, but start by buying our products and getting to know us and helping and reading them and applying it to your own, life, because it's going to make you feel so much better. And life is about feeling good. When you feel good, God, you really, I'm not saying that we should all jump out of bed every morning and be like, woohoo, but we want to have our enthusiasm that we know is inside of us, and we can deal with stresses a lot better. So we then thought, right, okay, let's launch this properly. And so we've designed the website, and we've got on there, these Better Boxes. And so what I wanted to do was to start these things called specific health focus boxes, which is a very long word. And if you think of a better name, then please share it. And we're starting with blissful sleep, clarity of mind, and immune support. And what these are is I've written a guide on, for example, clarity of mind. So in other words, the brain. And so I've discussed how our brain works, what it needs for optimum function, what the foods that we need to nourish our brain. And it's a really lovely guide. Now, the lady that's done all of our illustrations has illustrated it. My son has put it into a beautiful PDF, and it's approachable, and it's interesting, and it contains a lot of research. It's got resources at the back, which is amazing. Some very interesting new ideas. So, for example, Food for the Brain have got like a little test online, and you can do the test, and it tells you whether you need to be concerned about any of your brain function. So anyway, these boxes, they come as 3 days, 5 days, and 7 days, and you can pick your meals to go in the box. Now, if you pick the Clarity of Mind box, all the meals that you can pick from will be rich in the nutrients that our brain needs to nourish it. Yeah, so I love plant-based food, but I also love to have chicken every now and again, or fish, or whatever. And so I wanted people to be able to choose a variety if they wanted to. Or if their partner wasn't dairy-free, you can still pick things for them that might have dairy in it. Actually, there's probably only 3 or 4 dishes on our entire menu that have got dairy in it, because I prefer not to use it. Yeah, so you can choose, which again is quite another unique thing. These are very special boxes that we're going to add to. So I'll do a weight management one. I'm going to do a balancing hormones for, because I get so many people that say, I know my hormones aren't balanced, but what exactly does that mean, and how do I sort that out? So this is what they are. They're like little gold mines. You can search for food based on health concerns. So you can say, show me the food that is good for aging gracefully, or is good for keto. You can do by health concern, you can do by dietary preference, and you can do lifestyle. So you can tick pre-workout, post-workout, and you'll get all the suggestions that are geared towards that. Does that make sense? So
great.
Yeah, so it's really good. It's amazing. The website is amazing.
And you've also got you're launching as well with Rachel to sample a 2-hour.
Oh yes. So that's another thing, is what we're doing is, so Rachel she's the most loveliest, knowledgeable. Oh, she's just such a beautiful person. And so she's now part of Apres, so she's part of us. And she's developing online workshops and courses. So basically, if you had this brain, you bought the Clarity of Mind box, for example. And as I said, you can do 3 days, 5 days, or 7 days. And the guide is free, by the way. We don't charge for the guide. And we've given you a discount for buying, more of the days. She's going to develop an online course which will dovetail into that box. So for example, you've got your guide, but now you can also do an online course to learn more about it, more about the food and how to prepare the food, because it's about sharing information is what we're doing. And so she's also going to set up a membership. Another thing that was really important to me was to develop a community, and I wanted to develop a safe space so that even if your friends or my friends, whatever, don't necessarily eat the way I do, that I have got a community that we can share tips and tricks and things, and and feel validated and get more information, and just basically share. So strengthening what we're doing and expanding, which is amazing.
Yes, I can look forward to seeing where it all goes. I should let you get back to your cooking. You've got a busy day ahead.
We're ready now. Just have to say, look, sorry, Archie's now we're open. We've got some customers. He's just off the scale excited. Yeah.
Exactly.
So thank you so much.
No, thank you for your time.